So welcome once again for the a new show and tell talk. This time we have Mac, and he will be talking to us about data visualization, but with Astro. So it's really
Exactly.
exciting because there is a lot of content about Astro, but not enough, I think. So this
Yeah.
will be very fun to watch. But before we jump into the talk presentation, I don't know how you had this set up, so is everything in suspense? Um, can
Yes.
you maybe just sprinkle a little about you? Where are you from located right now, and why are you talking about this?
Right. So first of all, thanks for having me, Matthias. So my full name is Maciej Pędzik, but there's no way you'll ever pronounce it unless you're from Poland, just like me, and because we love assigning difficult names here in Poland. But yeah, you can call me Mac. I'm an 18-year-old, well now high school graduate from Poland, and starting October, I'll officially be a computer science student, and
Cool.
more specifically, I'm looking to study at Polish-Japanese Academy of Information Technology in Warsaw. So I see 200 kilometers away from my city Kielce. It's called. So yeah, I'm really excited about it, and even more so about presenting this data visualization up. But first of all, we have to. I want to tell you about just kind of the origin story of it. So, like why I decided to build it in the first place. So there were a couple of reasons. First one, I stumbled upon a Twitter profile called Formula Data Analysis, which actually posts charts of from actual real life Formula One races. And I'll probably link to it at the kind of at the end of the talk. But also because I convinced my friends to get another F1 themed official F1 video game when it was on sale back in April. And so we also decided to organize this little online racing league between ourselves, shortly after our finals. And I also, and like shortly, like literally on the day before our first race, I found this feature called UDP telemetry, which where you need to specify an address and a port in your local network, and the game will essentially send you all sorts of in-game data in real time. As so that you can do whatever you want really with it, where we store it. So I thought I would take advantage of it, write a script that would capture all the data and save it to a database. Which we'll also get to. And then also once we were done with the championship, I could finally start working on the site. So as you mentioned, I've opted to use Astro because what I believe Astro thrives at, the types of sites are the ones that aren't really user interaction heavy. Although you can use say React, Vue, Svelte, or any other front-end framework components if you need it. But I actually didn't need to do that because as I said, those Astro sites are sites that don't rely heavily on user interaction. May I think that's Astro is a great choice in that regard. I've also used Tailwind with Flowbyte because Flowbyte is a great plugin that offers a wide variety of components from all your standard nav bars, dialogues, and what have you. Really, it's got a wide variety, just like PlanetScale, which is equally generous when it comes to its free, like it's actually called Hobby tier. And it's also powered by MySQL, so it's got like a strong foundation on that regard. It doesn't, and I also used a library called Apex Charts for actually displaying those charts. Because just like Flowbyte, it's really flexible. It's got really nice TypeScript support, which you don't actually find with many charting libraries these days, and this one was probably the best. And I think that's it when it comes to the tech stack. So I think it's time to showcase.
Yeah.
Maybe before that, just kind of showcase the database structure and also explain the format. I won't get into like any kind of super racing details unless I'll have to. But again, it's I'll try my best to explain the concepts for a layman. So
Cool.
let's get into it.
Cool.
So let me
Just
share my screen.
just before you go jump into that,
Yeah.
just a little clarifications. The format of this is really, really loosey. Basically, Mac will be presenting whoever he need to present, but to avoid interruptions, just write in the chat if you have any question. I will try to interrupt Mac if it makes sense. If not, I will bring all of the question afterwards when Mac is ready to answer that. So collect your questions, write
Yes.
it down, and let's move on. So, Mac, the
Right.
microphone and the stage is all yours.
Yes, let's go. Right, so as Aaron said, yes, you are going to learn so much about F1, but don't worry. So I'm actually going to share my entire screen. Right, this resolution should be good. So so can you see it? Can you see this kind of diagram right here on my screen? On my screen.
Yep, I can see it. So
Right.
I look at your
Everyone
version
else?
control and your online racing stats
Right.
table.
Yeah, so this is the database structure. So let's actually break it down table by table. And this will also enable me to explain the racing format. So in this game, there are 10 teams, and each team has exactly 2 drivers. And now all these drivers compete in 24 rounds, where each round consists of 3 sessions. A practice session, where, as the name suggests, you get to test car behavior. You can tweak the car around to the circuit, because each one is different in its own way, and there isn't a one setup fits all solution. Just like in tech, you've got all these different frameworks that are better for a different use case scenario. Just like Astro, we've also got Nux. So but anyway, you've also got qualifying, where you've got 15 to 18 minutes to set as fast of a lap time as possible, and whoever sets the fastest lap time will get to start the race from the first position. There is one caveat though, but we'll get to it in a minute. And now, each race consists of, it could be somewhere between 11 to even 20 laps, depending on the length of the circuit. So the longer the circuit, the fewer the laps you have to race. And after each race, but also after each session, you get a sheet of results where you're assigned a position, and when it comes to the race, you're also given a number of points. But also penalties in seconds. If you misbehaved, you're you can get time penalties, which then get added to your race time and could actually have you drop a few positions in some cases. And speaking of bad behavior, we've also got a dedicated table for those incidents where it's all assigned to a specific session, where it's also got info about the driver ID, so the sort of culprit, as we can call it, the driver who did something wrong, and then as well as what exactly he did wrong, so the infringement and the potential penalty he received for that. This could be a warning, but also even a disqualification if you are naughty enough, so to speak. So that's how the data is structured. This database, because I'm using PlanetScale, this is a MySQL database. So for instance, you've got also I forgot to mention about the laps themselves. Although the total time counts to the actual classification, especially when it comes to qualifying, each track can be divided into 3 sectors, which, while they don't really aren't really important in the sort of grand scheme of things, I decided to include them, just for the for one specific visualization you'll get to see. There's also a flag for determining whether a lap is valid, so if a lap counts, and of course, when this lap was set, so in which session and by whom, by which driver. So I think that is really it when it comes to the kind of general racing format and the database structure. So I think we can move on to the actual site. So here it is, a very basic hero header bar, the Genius license simplicity. That's my philosophy. So you can either select a round, but you can also go to the navbar right here. And if you don't want to view a specific round, you might as well open up, just see a general overview of the drivers' championship or the team's championship. So let's actually go to the drivers first. So here you can see a bar chart showcasing the number of total points collected by each driver across the whole season. And it's all sorted by the number of points descendingly. So the driver with the greatest number of points, which just so happens to be me, is on the left hand side, and then it just goes all the way low up until the last place. You've also got a showcase of. We've also got a share of pole positions, which means starting from the first place, essentially, or winning the qualifying session, and also the race wins themselves. So those are probably the most important ones, because everyone wants to win the race, because you get to score the greatest number of points that count towards the championship, and also fastest laps, which also count towards your final points tally. There is one caveat though, and by the fastest laps I mean fastest laps set during the race itself. There's one caveat though, which applies to both the game and real life. You have to finish 10th or higher in order to get a point for the fastest lap. Otherwise, you won't get it. And you also get a table. I know you're probably after chance, but I also wanted to showcase like a full race by race results for each driver in this sort of table. I found this design on Wikipedia and thought I would copy it, as well as this sort of design philosophy, shall we say, where you show the charts at the top, and then as the sort of overview, as a summary of a given stat, and then a more detailed explanation. So also in this case, a table across alongside the legend, where we get an explanation of each color's meaning. It's right here. Then we can also view the team's championship. And here I decided to show just this one chart, but I thought I liked it the most, so to speak. And even if I wanted to replicate those pie charts from before, you would basically see the same sort of data. So I thought I would try something different and show a chart where, this time a line chart, where each point, each dot means like how many points a given team has scored after a given round, after a given race in the season. And a similar thing, but this time I decided to switch it up with a similar table, but the results are actually grouped by the team, and we have the teams sorted by their order, by their finishing order in the season. And the same legend here applies as well. This actually chart right here was also another kind of selling point for PlanetScale, because if you go to f1.planetscale.com, you get to see a similar demo, but for the real life event, which I also found cool. But as I said, we can also view statistics for an individual race. So here are cards. You can see they are grouped in rows of 4 cards each on desktops. Here's how they look like. You've got a thumbnail, a nice country flag, as well as the country name, and a note about the winner of the race, as well as a date as to when the race happened and the number of the round. So which round it was in its kind of championship order, in this chronological order, shall we say. So let's have a look. Let's go with Italy, shall we? So here you get a race summary, where you get to see those kind of KPI style cards. A KPI means key performance indicator. In this case, the total race time, as well as the top 3, where the second and third driver have a little annotation as to how much time they lost to the winner of the race. And there's also the tire stint history. In this case, it was a wet race. And what a stint means, essentially a period of racing for like a given driver before changing the tires. And we might actually want to kind of see a wider variety. So let's go to Austria. So this how it may also look like. It doesn't have to, like, those bars don't have to go all the way up, like they don't have to be of equal length. So for instance, if a driver had to retire early, was disqualified, or if a driver was lapped, so if a leader caught up to the driver and actually overtook him, they may finish the race a lap or even more earlier. So each bar, so there are 5 types of tires. There are softs, mediums, and hards, which are designed for the dry weather. Soft ones are the least durable, but they offer you the best performance. Mediums or medium tires offer you a slightly better durability, but by the same token, slightly worse performance. And then you've got the hard tires, which offer you the best durability, but also the worst performance. And then we've also got intermediate and wet tires, where intermediates are used when it's raining, but not as heavily, whereas the wet tires are used when, as you may have guessed it, when it rains heavily. That you actually have that cars could even be kind of sinking under the layer of water that could be created after the heavy rain on the surface. So that's why you've also got an extra type for that as well. You've also got a similar chart for qualifying, but this time with a similar KPI style top 3, but this time a different chart, which shows you just how much time a given driver lost to the winner of the session. And the same goes pretty much for practice as well. Right here. So there are also the results pages, which are probably the most boring ones because it shows you a table of the race of a given session's results, and it does how it looks for like for races, where it shows you the total race time of the leader, just how much time that it took the leader to complete all 18 laps in this case, as well as the number of points they scored after the race. And when it comes to qualifying and practice, you get to see a slightly different one because you've also get to see the best lap time they set, so the one that actually counted towards the result in the session, but also individual sector times, because again, why not just kind of add more data and variety to this chart, which could also be a visualization because you can also see the results. And there you also get to see the history of personal best times, which is a quite complicated one because in this chart you get to see, so the way it works is you take the best sector 1, 2, and 3 times for each driver, as well as the best overall time for each driver, and then compare it against the best overall times for each sector, as well as the best overall time in the session, the best one overall, as well as something that's called an ideal time. Because even though you may have, because for one overall lap, you might have done a good, say, first sector, but you might have done slightly better slightly worse in say sector 2 or 3. So even though you might have, so just because you've set an overall best time doesn't mean you've set the best time across all 3 sectors of the track, because you might have actually done better in some different lap that was actually worse overall. And the magenta bar signifies the personal best lap, but not the ideal time. It's actually maybe be somewhat confusing, but we'll get to kind of the code a bit later in a minute, so maybe this will lighten it up a bit. And then you've also got a history of race incidents, where we've got the kind of rundown. You've got 2 pie charts where they display the incidents grouped by the infringement, so what you've done wrong, and grouped by driver as to incidents grouped by who's done something wrong, and also has a table with an overview of the driver name, the sort of infringement, so what they did wrong, and the applied penalty, which can be whether a warning, a time penalty, as one of the aforementioned ones that gets added up to a total time. But speaking of penalties, so you may remember me mentioning one caveat when it comes to being first to winning the qualifying session for CFU. If we go back to, say, that's going to be a Monaco round, and take results. So you can see I was first. I won this session. However, there is a slight note that says that I was awarded what's known as a grid penalty, which means that I was actually dropped. That actually started from a lower position. I was moved 5 places back because of causing that collision. And so what that means that when it comes to calculating the pole positions, as kind of also the awarding the pole positions, it's actually the first driver that wasn't assigned, that wasn't given a grid penalty. So what this means, if we go back to the race results, it means that whoever is the first driver to have not been awarded a grid penalty, so wasn't dropped a few places, will actually move up because the driver ahead got to start from a lower position. So in this case, my friend David will get that pole position, and so he gets that kind of 1 point, so to speak. Maybe not. It's got one more towards the stats, which will get to how it's calculated. I think we can do it right now. So let's have a look, shall we? Let's see. Maybe let's try maybe the championships first. We've got the drivers one. So I've actually split. So the way I've done it here is I've split those charts into their self-contained components, and that's where I perform the queries with Drizzle ORM. And so this one's the total points scored is gonna be right here. So so as the total points scored, my name, you may have guessed, we just need to get all the race results and then use the SQL sum function to sum them all up. As it says, and then we also need to make sure that we sum them up for each individual driver. So we need to group by results driver ID, as well as we also need to select it from here because we need to also join on the drivers table to get the driver's last name, and we also need to sort the data, sort the results by the total of points descendingly here, and then we also move on to defining the chart options, which makes me we should go back to kind of backtrack for a second, or maybe a side note in a minute, because when it comes to configuring charts, at least the Apex charts, when you need to change the way you display the data, so to speak, so we should actually go back to the chart you saw in the qualifying or practice summary for the gap to the session's winner, is that because I used milliseconds to store all the total time and all the lap time data, you wouldn't want to display those kind of raw milliseconds kind of unformatted to the user, because they wouldn't be able to read that. That's not a human readable format. So what you need to do is, if you go back to the so if you take a look at the Apex charts documentation, say go to the it wasn't x-axis though, was it? It was y-axis, if my memory is correct. The point is, you need to specify a formatter for the label, so for the number you want to display. And so you'd think that I'll just need to just specify this function, so we're in these options here, and just call it a day, just pass it to the component, and that'll be it. Unfortunately, there's a one caveat though. So because for one, we would need to pass that to a client-side script of the chart component, and instead of doing it and in order to do that, we need to create a custom web component. But also because when you pass those props, as we would call them, into web components, you you need to turn all these props into a string, and when you stringify the options you pass from the Astro component right here, you will essentially lose that formatter function. So if you were to specify a formatter function here, it will just get lost in the serialization. So what you need to do, so the way to work around it is specifying the formatter function for displaying the data in a human-friendly way in the client-side script itself, right here, and I did it by checking because I initially thought I would need to use more sort of different formatters for different sort of visualizations, but I actually ended up using only this one function. So for that, I created an extra prop for the page that the chart is using sort of the mode, the formatter to use for a given page, and then passed it over to the web component via the data formatter prop, then read it in this web components via this web components data set, and then finally just checked the value of the prop in the data set, and then depending on that, I only ended up switching to either this formatter function or nothing at all. Another option, because I've set a bunch of default options so that I wouldn't have to specify the same ones every time I needed to create a chart. I also needed to make use. So first of all, as I mentioned, because the props of a web component are strings, I also need to call JSON.parse from the options that I've passed, and then what I need to do is to call a deep merge function. It's actually an external one utility right here, because what happens, you may think that I should have done a spread syntax. So but if I wanted to use spread syntax to merge these two objects together, I would only do it one level deep. So if I had options that go much deeper, that are kind of nested properties, they would get lost as well. So I needed to so if I wanted to overwrite those nested properties, I had to make use of deep merge instead. But coming back to so let's actually have a look at number of pole positions, the caveat I mentioned earlier. Here, so here we actually need to use window functions, which are useful when you want to work over a smaller subset of data within a bigger chunk. And here I used a rung function where I split those chunks up by a session ID, where I also made sure to account only for the qualifying sessions, because we're talking pole position. So the first position in qualifying, and if we take, and as I said, I also needed to check if a given driver was awarded a grid penalty, which has a code of 2. In which case we should exclude the driver, because they will get dropped those few positions back. And then we need to use rank to get the new position after those grid penalties have been applied. So I did it in a and so when I actually moved on to the actual query, I need to check if the new position after applying those penalties is 1, and also count the number of rows with number 1, and for each driver as well. And I also need to create and then just move it on to create appropriate chart options. for this chart. There are also charts for this one's actually, I think, in the in this layout chart, probably the one of the trickiest ones to get, where if you go back, I'm referring to this type of chart right here, where once again you're shown, you take the best time that a driver has set in each individual sector, as well as the overall best time, as well as it's the best times gap to the best ideal time. So an ideal time would be to just take the best sector 1, sector 2, and sector 3 times, add them together, and then we also need to check which of the ideal times is the best one, and that magenta dot signifies the gap to a given driver's personal best time to the best ideal time. And for that, as I said, I need to use min for every single sector, as well as the overall lap time that was recorded, and do it only for a given round number prop right here, as well as the session we're currently in. I also needed to check if a given lap was valid, so if it really does count, as well as also check if every single every time in each sector is greater than 0, and also if the total time is greater than a minute, because it's impossible to set a minute long time, and the ones that have a value lower than a minute are usually are usually when a driver retires, or if a game decides to send to stop the timer too early, which actually happened during one of the races. So I had to filter out this lap time as well by this greater than condition. And so I needed to do that for each individual driver. I also needed to get this ideal time, as I said, by getting the sum of each best sector 1, 2, and 3 times, and then compare it, and then calculate the difference between the best sector for a current driver, as well as the overall best sector 1, 2, and 3, as well as the best times for the, as I was taking the personal best time for a given driver and calculating the difference between that and the overall best ideal lap time. And then I also needed to order those results by each driver's personal best times as well. And here I actually needed to. So what you'd think you need to do is to just loop through or map via the drivers and have say data be the gap to best sector 1, sector 2, and sector 3, and so on. But what you actually have to do instead is you actually have to group by the type of data. So instead you have an object for gaps to best sector 1, for instance, and then the data. That's where you actually get to loop through for each driver, where the X is the label name, so the driver, and the Y is the actual value of this gap. And the same goes actually for sector 2 and sector 3, and actually it doesn't actually do for the gap of a driver's personal best time to the ideal lap time, because I wanted to display a single dot, or a line, I should say. But the only way to do that, I wanted to use a combo chart, but so I would essentially have separate series where I would use a chart of type bar and create a separate series for those personal best times gap. That would use a different type of chart over it, but in order to display them, the gap for each, those each individual category for for different sectors in this single line, I had to set the apex chart. I believe that was going to be stacked property to true, which again the stacks the data categories one on top of the other in each line, which effectively prevents me from using combo charts. So I had to do away with using this goals property for displaying those estimates, as the name suggests, goals or maybe estimates for a given value. Where the downside to it is that it doesn't display because it's not a separate series, it doesn't get displayed in the legend right here. So you don't have a magenta and then the personal best times gap, which is a bit of a shame. But this was the best workaround I could come up with. And I think that's it really for the most interesting visualizations. Unless you believe I've missed one and you've got some extra follow-up questions, then feel free to ask. I might stop sharing, but I'll come back to it if. Right. So James is asking as to how nice working with Drizzle was. And because I've heard good things but never tried them myself. Looks like I think you got to see a lot of window functions all over the place when especially for those data visualization type of websites, because you often get to work, I say, with subsets of data and comparing them across each other. But as I said, Drizzle ORM is very nice to work with because it offers you very little to no overhead, unlike other ORMs, which some may quote as a downside, but I actually believe it's an upside because it's really easy to convert a Drizzle ORM call into an actual SQL query, and that also offers you more fine-grained control over, say, joins or using those advanced expressions like window functions, for instance. And I think it's also got very nice DX when it comes to error handling. So, for instance, if you use a common table expression and want to reference a field in the kind of mainline query, you need to specify an alias for one of those fields in that CTE or a subquery. Otherwise, Drizzle ORM won't be able, or otherwise you will get an error. In which case, Drizzle ORM will tell you that hey, you forgot to actually add this as call, and maybe that's why this query failed to convert the Drizzle ORM calls into the query. So, go on.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is kind of a question that I always ask to anyone that is building something interesting or complex enough, like these really complex queries that you have there. How do you come up with the decision about your stack? I mean, okay, Tailwind, you already mentioned something about Astro. You already mentioned that you like Flowbyte. There are other components like right there, but yeah.
Yes.
What is your decision process there? How do you pick PlanetScale over Supabase or MySQL over Postgres, whatever?
So when it comes to those decisions, it often comes down to factors like how user interaction heavy, as in how reactive does a UI have to be? Like, is the sort of data, does the data change, and just how much data do you have? Because I also forgot to mention that there's also decisions as to whether to use, say, Astro collections or, say, PlanetScale, because I registered like 2,000 records for incidents and over 10,000 lap times as well. So while I could always save all that data to files and plug them into Astro's content collections, I would be leaving a lot of performance over the table, because as much as Astro content collections are great, there are limitations, and the more files you use, the more performance you're effectively leaving on the table, and that's why you need to consult using an actual database that is more optimized for larger volumes of data, because you've also got the benefit of indexing SQL and what have you. But also when it comes to decisions like PlanetScale versus Superbase, and that PlanetScale, I think, offers, as I probably mentioned, a very generous free tier that you've got a lot of storage size, but also we've also got a high high limit when it comes to the number of rows you can read per month and number of rows you can and number of write operations you can perform in a month, which I won't even get to extend that limit, because again it's a read only it's a read only site, so to speak. Speaking of read only, I also chose PlanetScale because it offers you a feature called password roles, which allows you to create credentials that have different permissions. So, for instance, in a production app, you would, in my case, I would just need to create a separate username and password, because that's only got read-only access. So that even if I did say end up with a SQL injection vulnerability somewhere, the user won't get to like drop table, say, users or like results, apps, whatever. They may obviously just try to do an optimized write, or a read, I should say, but that's also a huge bonus that you've got the fine grained control, access control.
I can see that you are very knowledgeable on those things, and your mind go really fast. But my question is, do you come out with all of these decisions up front, or you are just adapting yourself in the road?
I would say when it comes to the features, or maybe the types of visualizations, I would actually say a huge inspiration source is where the PlanetScale demo right here, for instance, when it comes to that chart for displaying the kind of the number of points each team had after every specific round, but also the formula data analysis profile that's on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Reddit as well. I want to link to their Twitter page. I had a link, but I think I closed it. It's formula data analysis, but yeah, they've also got. Actually, I've got a link to their Buy Me a Coffee page, because I actually support them on Buy Me a Coffee, because they give you access to high quality data visualizations and the ones that you don't see published on Twitter. So I would say that was also kind of my source of inspiration, the decisions as well when it comes to making them feature wise.
There is another good question in the chat. By the way, if you want, we still have a few minutes. So if you want to come up with a question, you can open your mic, be on camera, or just write on the chat. The question is from Nick. It's asking, how was the split between the runtime JS and compile time JS? He's talking about the difference between what you write in the from matter of the Astro files versus
so I think when it comes to like writing those in the fence in the client side, it's like the common gotchas. I would say that come to mind when you're writing the code in fence and you've got like the triple dashes, right? So that's where this code runs server side, and a common gotcha or like something to keep in mind is that you don't, like server side, you don't have access to, say, document or window, for instance. And so if you wanted to access that in the code fence, in the dashes, you get an error. So it also actually so I actually had to move some of those kind of, especially the chart configurations stuff, some configuration options into the client-side script, and also use the web components to be able to pass the data from the server-side script, from the front matter, so to speak, over to the client-side script. There is actually a pattern in the Astro cookbook, if my memory is correct. So yeah, but I don't think like there was like any significant, as for the time difference. I didn't notice like any major kind of significant performance kind of downside. So I think that's also a huge plus on Astro's side, and maybe the queries as well, indexing.
Is this your first kind of big project with Astro, Drizzle, PlanetScale with this stack, or did you experiment before that? Before this?
I've actually got to write a couple of Astro sites before, like Astro specifically. Namely, it's got to be my personal website and a blog in one. But I also got to work on some prototypes for Aaron in the chat as well. We did have some Astro sites. We did throw them up together. Where I also got to kind of where you also had, say, the client side script versus the server side script, for instance. So when it comes to Astro, I think I've already had plenty of experience under my belt. But when it comes to PlanetScale, that was something completely new. When it comes to using the platform itself, and although I had prior SQL experience, like before I took on this project, I think it had actually been quite a while since I last used SQL, like in general. My SQL, whether it be Postgres, SQLite, whatever. But like another huge kind of upside to using PlanetScale, like a huge pro, is that they've got a fantastic MySQL for Developers course, which I'll also link up to. That you should definitely check out, whether you're looking to use PlanetScale or not. Led by Aaron Francis, a great teacher as well. Yeah, so this is the course I would highly recommend. Like, maybe not for like a total beginner, for someone who has never used SQL before, but because it actually touches on. I mean, it does touch on, let's say, the data types you have in MySQL, and maybe those other basics. But I think it also puts more emphasis on the intermediate topics, like those window functions, indexing, and what have you. But I think that's actually where I got to learn about window functions, and that's where they really proved useful in my scenario. So yeah, this is why you should also.
Totally agree. You should learn some SQL for the good.
Yeah.
Do you have this project available for open source, public, GitHub?
I think I was actually meant to like publish it like before the talk, but just wanted to add this one more feature, like this complex personal best times chart. So I also got carried away because I thought I'll throw in just one more chart just for a good measure. I mean, I got caught up in that, but I will publish it later today and deploy the site as well. So, well, yes, I might have bent the truth a little. When it comes to using PlanetScale, it will actually be used there. And it's actually another like upside to it is because it's powered by MySQL. You can also they've got like a dedicated JavaScript driver, database driver that you can use with Drizzle ORM, but you can also use a driver for MySQL databases specifically, and this will also work fine. So that sort of interoperability is also a huge upside, especially if you have a copy of a local kind of database or a testing database that I've got hosted elsewhere. So again, you can the ability to connect to a PlanetScale database via a standard MySQL Node.js driver is also a huge upside, and the fact why I should consider PlanetScale as well.
Cool. I really loved the work that you just present. It's amazing. I really got kind of confused, kind of caught up with the
my
big
first time
queries.
Yes, again,
really complex one. Good work there. Do really good work there too, though. So will be lovely to have the access to the code, so everyone can poke around, look, learn something. That always is amazing.
Yeah, practice makes perfect. Again, my first talk, I'll definitely bring up key takeaways. I'll definitely maybe go a bit too haphazard, so to speak. But again, it's my first time. It's always an opportunity to present a project in public. And again, it might not be my best attempt, but the first attempts are never really the best. As the first, as the first ups, as the first say walk, first run, first session in the gym. It's always you've always got to make that kind of first leap. First project will never be perfect, and it's that. Yeah, go on.
Don't be hard on yourself. It was
Yeah.
a really good presentation and in a really good place. So don't you worry. It was really good. We are almost at the hour, and so if someone have any other question, please bring it on. And if no one have any other questions, do you have something else you want to close, or are we good?
Yes.
So everyone was really impressed with the queries.
Yeah, again, pretty complex stuff, but that's what it is. And again, it's practice makes perfect, I guess. When it comes to both those queries and those talks, it was my pleasure. Again, you have to make that first leap. It might not have been the best one, but again, as I said, it's sometimes done is better than perfect. You have to make that first. You have to make that first appearance on the talk, even if it didn't go down too well. It's if it's like there's this again going back to F1. If this one is a quote from an F1 driver called Mario Andretti from the US. If you're if everything is going under control, you're not going fast enough. so that's I think that's kind of the to wrap it all up. That's the quote I'm leaving you today with. And that's again, thanks for having me. Hope you enjoyed it. However complex these queries may have been, and however wet they may have been, again, it's sometimes not better than perfect. And I had a blast working on this project. And I'm pretty sure I'm only going to expand from there. And there's that from me, really. I think, unless there are any other questions.
I really appreciate you coming to this show and tell. It was a really good talk, and yeah, as you mentioned, practice makes perfect. And for complex as complex as the code seems to be, it always starts simple. So it's just think about digging and digging and digging, right?
Exactly.
So, and also I really love this kind of talk where the presenter is the speaker is actually really excited about his stuff. So it's always it's a feeling that you can feel through the screen. So yeah.
Again, there's only so much time and so much knowledge I'd like to share. I mean, I could like go on countless hours on like all the F1 specific stuff. But again, it's this would probably turn out to be a nice cure for insomnia session rather than a talk. So yeah.
So that's a wrap, and don't forget, next week we have Liz for the developer show and tell. She will be talking about topic to be defined yet, I think, kind of. She already
to be announced.
Yeah, to be announced.
I got it. Yeah. I've got it. It's how to teach new developers GitHub workflows before they have a job working in a team. It's the chicken and egg issue. So we're going to be going down we're going to be going down the rabbit hole with the Alice in Wonderland project. So.
Yeah, that would be
looking forward to it as well.
Totally awesome.
If you have any question for Mac, go ahead, DM him or write in the chat. If you have any question about the Developer Show and Tell, or you want to join to Developer Show and Tell sessions, please ping me. We will schedule something for the future. Next week we have Liz, and so really excited for that too. So thank you for being here, and that's a wrap. We end up at the hour.
Yeah. So once again, thanks for having me. Have a nice day or a good night wherever you are in the world. Take care.
Thank you, Mac. See ya.